John Smith, and donating time is Robert Singletary.
Right here.
Okay. Carol Geiger. Okay. Edie Mukherjee. She's left. Okay, so you have up to 9 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Tom Smith. I'm better known as Smitty, and I participated in the negotiation of the environmental agreement that you have before you. And I'm going to ask you all today to vote no on this contract because I don't think the environmental agreement is good enough for the city of Austin and what we want to become and what we are today. It does not follow with this particular race. I do want to thank Chris and the other people who participated in the negotiations. This is far better than where we were a week ago, and we've made a lot of progress. I think the most important reason that I can give you for being against this agreement is the incredible risk to our environment and to our attainment for various federal standards for ozone. I have a lot of concerns about climate and the enforceability of this and our efforts to really make this a sustainable facility that we've heard described. If I could have the next slide, please. Let's go to the next slide and we'll come back to this one. Austin and Central Texas have made dramatic reductions in the amount of ozone that we produce because of enormous efforts made by our businesses, our citizens, and so forth. We started up with nearly 90 parts per billion. We're down to 74. Today, the federal ozone standard is 75. And because of heroic efforts, we're very close to attainment. Next slide, please. But we're very close to violating the ozone standard. In 2009, the red bar up there shows that we had a high ozone reading of about 76 parts per billion. And what's most important here is that yellow bar. The air pollution blowing into Austin was at 68 parts per billion. That's what's coming today from Corpus Christi, Houston, San Antonio, Goliad, and the power plants and other industrial facilities in between here and the coast. Now, the problem I want to bring to your attention is there is a very high likelihood in August that the EPA is going to drop the ozone levels down to 70 parts per billion, and this facility is likely to put us at risk of violating those ozone standards. And if it is at 70 parts per billion, we've got 4 parts per billion to go to attain. And depending on how fast we have to do that, it's going to be extraordinarily costly to us. Next slide, please. What you see here is something that's been discussed by Chris and others. This is the ozone season and the peaks. And what you see is our peak violations of ozone season are generally from March through July, and then again from July through November. One of the worst times for us to be holding this race is in June because it's likely to increase significantly the number of violations we have in the regular period of time. Now, what is going on at this race? There are several components to the race. You have high emissions of pollutants from the cars that run around this track. Lots of unburned gasolines or fuels, actually, it's not gasolines that are used, that are more highly reactive even than gasoline, and nitrogen oxides and other gases that combine to form the ozone that causes these various violations. Now that's a very small portion of the total net emissions that result from operating this facility. The bigger chunk of the emissions are the 25,000 cars or more that are going to be going in and out of the facility, and all of the trucks and buses carrying people in and out of the facility, and all of the vehicles that are used to help produce events of this size. All of the diesel engines that are sitting there idling and helping to provide excess power at peak times. All of the trucks doing load in and load out. All combine to create a large cloud of ozone. And that's just for the F1 race. But there will be many other events during the course of the year in order for this place is to be successful, all of which will also contribute to threatening ozone. Now the question is, will they push us beyond the 2 part per billion threshold, either push us beyond 75 at the current level, or push us from 68 parts per billion up to over 70 and cause us to be in entertainment? We simply don't know. Your city staff hasn't analyzed it. I asked the race sponsors, do they know? They haven't come up with a study yet. So I sent my team of interns out to see what we could find. Next slide, please. We hear a lot about Montreal as being a comparable race to that of the city of Austin. Unfortunately, in Canada, in Montreal, they do their air pollution analysis slightly different than we do. They do it in French. I don't speak French. And in addition, they have an air quality index that is a combination of NOx, VOCs, and particle matters. And their standards from their metrics are different than ours too for what becomes a violation. But what's of interest and importance to you as city council members making a decision as to whether we're doing good enough with this agreement and the risks, whether the risks might outweigh the benefits, are the big red numbers. There was one day where on race day, the pollution index went up 75 parts per billion more than the day before. Discard that. That must have been some industrial problem they were having there. But the rest of them, up 26 points, up 2 points. These are the kinds of data that would indicate up 7 points another day, up 1 point another day. If we got these kinds of readings off of running the F1 race in Austin, Texas, we would be in violation of 4 of the 5-day race days that they have had races there, with the exception of the 75 one. We'd be in violation of that one too. This is enough to push us over the line into non-attainment. And so I asked my intern, so what does non-attainment mean? How much would that cost us? Next slide, please. And what we found was a national study that said, how much is it going to cost us to get down to 70 parts per billion? And we did a math analysis to figure out what that would mean to Texas and what that would mean to Austin. And it's about between $36 and $48 million per year. Per year. That costs are far exceeding the economic value that the city will get of $26.4 million if this race is run. Can we afford it? I think not. And is the risk high? Yes. Now, do we have definitive proof? No. I certainly can't say here today that the F1 race is going to push us 2 parts per billion above. But nobody else can say no, because we haven't done that study. Well, what kind of policy making are we engaged in if we haven't done the study before threatening our air quality and getting ourselves into a non-attainment journey that will take a decade or more to get ourselves out of? I'm urging you to pause and take a good hard look at whether or not this is a deal we should be doing, whether we can afford this deal. Now let me go to the deal that we did do, because there's some good things and some bad things in this deal that I want to point out. So if you go back about 5 slides, so the one looks kind of like a bar chart or comparison chart at the front. And this is in front of you, and I'm sorry for those of you in the audience who aren't going to be able to read it more clearly. It's also in your PowerPoint. We did a number of things that were very good and innovative here. We did say we're going to offset global warming emissions. That's the good news. However, we capped the emissions in 2 very significant ways. One, we said we're only going to look at the emissions that are resulting from the fuel use and the generation on site, and not looking at the full arrangement. And we only put a $15,000 cap on it. We did say that the race sponsors are going to monitor and offset the emissions that result from the race and other major events out there. But we didn't give the people who are going to enforce this adequate money to set up the modeling, the baseline, and that sort of stuff. That's a $100,000 bill that somebody's got to pay that the Council of Governments does not have the money for. We did say, in addition, that we're going to put parking caps on the system. But one of the things I find most disturbing is we want to be known nationally as a beacon of sustainability. We want to be the people winning the race for the most sustainable city in the United States. And this agreement puts us squarely in the middle of the pack. We have the world's, and perhaps, the nation's, and perhaps the world's best green building program. All we're asking for is a 2 on the green building rating. We have a tremendous site selection sustainability program. All we're asking for is 2. As Karen's mentioned, we have one of the best renewable programs in the nation, winning awards year after year. Our costs are achieved on that. We're asking for 50% renewable purchase by these guys. This particular agreement is basically a halfway step. It is not what we want to be and see ourselves becoming. We have lost significant opportunities in this, and with a couple of months' worth of additional work, we could find out how much it's going to cost if we go ahead and not take it. We could do the analysis that we don't have the staff time to do. And we could really develop a good agreement instead of one that doesn't have enforcement penalties in it. Thank you all very much for your time. Please join me.